All right, everybody, I think we're going to get started. If you're here for Layout Builder, a paragraphs killer, you're in the right spot, as indicated by the slide. If you're not, stay. It's bound to be entertaining. So let's start off with a brief introduction. Turn the clicker on. So we work for Oomph. It's a digital agency in Providence, Rhode Island. We have employees all over the United States. We're a full-service web agency headquartered in Providence, Rhode Island. I've already said that. We help companies with digital strategy, user experience design, and Drupal implementations. Some of our clients include Blue Cross Blue Shield, Rhode Island School of Design, and Brown University. We do a lot of Drupal work. We also do a little bit of WordPress work. We do system integrations. We work with commerce, multilingual, and accessibility. We are also hiring. So if you're looking for a job, go to our website. You can find out a ton about us and find out about all our open positions. A little bit about me. My name is John Picozzi. I'm the Senior Drupal Architect at Oomph. I am a co-organizer of the New England Drupal Camp right down the road in Providence, Rhode Island. Also co-organizer of the Providence Drupal Meetup. Happens at the Oomph Inc. offices every month. I'm a co-podcaster, Talking Drupal podcast. I'm an Acquia certified site builder, both in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. And for this talk, I'm the hype man for my partner, Kathleen Beck.
All right, I'm going to come over here where there's a microphone, and John's slides had nice pictures, mine do not. I'm a senior UX engineer at Oomph. There I work with the front-end team, site building, and UX. I've been working at Oomph since 2014, and I've been working on Drupal since 4.7 was out, so that's a good 9-10 years ago. I actually didn't build anything on that. I didn't build anything until 5. I also am helping lead Oomph's accessibility initiative, and I co-organize the Oomph's monthly outings, where we just get together as a company and do fun things, go to bars or paintball or stuff like that. So it's kind of fun there. Again, we're hiring.
So let's jump into our topic, and we're going to start with an overview. So I know the title is big, right? It's a big title. But this isn't really going to be a debate on which one is better. I know some of you are disappointed, but that's okay. We're also not going to do any or very little paragraphs bashing. We're going to simply talk about how we're using paragraphs, or how we have used paragraphs, and why we're thinking about moving towards Layout Builder, how we're actually using Layout Builder in projects that we're actively building right now. So, in this corner, paragraphs. You may or may not remember, about 3 years ago, right at this conference, I stood in front of a room of people and delivered a talk called What's in a Name? Building Custom Layouts with Paragraphs, where I said, hey, Oomph's using paragraphs, and here are all the great ways that we're doing it. Well, Oomph's still building some sites with paragraphs. Matter of fact, we have one that I'm going to show you in a little bit, set to launch this month. But we're also shifting to looking at Layout Builder for future projects. So we're going to get into a couple of examples of how we're using paragraphs currently, and then Kathy's going to jump into how we're using Layout Building. First example here is just a simple list of all of our paragraph bundles that we use on sites when we build them with paragraphs. We like to use a paragraph called a flexible content area, and then we give the content admin the ability to add all of these different paragraph bundles that all do different things. And this then allows content editors to develop really rich layouts, which we're going to show you in a minute. Just a couple of those. Let's see. So we have a hero image, video, a WYSIWYG component. This one actually has content references to a couple of different views that they can drop into content if need be. So super flexible and allows the content editor to do a bunch of different stuff. Let's look at some of these examples. So here we have a paragraph bundle for the Leica Geosystems website. And this website, you're seeing a little bit behind the curtain here because this website actually hasn't launched yet. So don't go running out and telling everybody you saw this. But this is just a basic paragraph bundle. It shows an image on the right, nice header, a little bit of text underneath it. Again, we have another example here, includes an image with a button, a call to action at the bottom. And then again, we have something here where we're splitting into 3 columns with a nice big header at the top. These are all different variations of different paragraph bundles that they have available to them. Here you'll see that this is actually how they put them all together to make a really dynamic page. They have the ability to do this in any variation or combination that they want. So what's my point here? My point here is that paragraphs gives content editors a huge amount of flexibility. Well, why would we want to come away from that? Hopefully by the end of this talk, you understand the answer to that question. So I have a couple more examples here, just to drive the point home. Here we have a site that we did for Genscape, a local company here in Boston, and they have the same ability. This is actually their homepage. They have the ability to put a bunch of paragraph bundles together to create this really dynamic, awesome looking layout. And last but not least, we have RISD Careers. And the Ron School of Design has a career site. Again, they want their site to look great. They want their admins to be able to mix and match content. This is how they're doing it. All right, so paragraphs. That's how Oomphn's using paragraphs. That's the power of paragraphs that we give our clients. Let's go to the other corner with Layout Builder, right? So first off, why? Why switch to Layout Builder, right? If what you're doing is working, we're using paragraphs, it's working. Ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Well, you get some benefits with Layout Builder right out of the box. One is it's in core, right? You go to the course, list of modules, Layout Builder is right there. Now, note, if anybody's like hardcore into Drupal and the module screen, you are never, ever, ever going to be able to find that list of modules in the list of core items. I'll let you figure out why. You can ask me later. So, what else? Well, if anybody's ever tried to translate paragraphs, it's pretty difficult. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's doable, but it's not easy. Well, Layout Builder's in core. Core can be translated. Layout Builder items can be translated, right? Everybody's kind of like, yeah, okay, I see where you're going with this. So, a question might be, okay, well, you said it's in core, awesome. You said it's easier to translate, awesome. But I got all my paragraph bundles. What do I do with them? How do I translate them into Drupal? Well, here we're going to say, block types are the new paragraph bundles, right? And that's how we're using block types. Again, block types, obviously, they're in core. They're reusable, which is awesome. They translate, they're fieldable, and they're templatable. So just right out of the box, without adding any additional modules, you have this ability to recreate, say, about 90% of what we're doing in paragraphs with core Drupal. That's awesome. That's super awesome. I'm super excited about that, right? So you may be asking, how do I get started with this? This is so awesome. I want to jump in right now. Just stop talking, let me jump in. Well, getting started is pretty easy. I recommend that you actually download a fresh version of Drupal, duh, right? But start with Umami. Umami is a great way to jump into how do I use Layout Builder, what can I do with Layout Builder, different layouts that I can create. When we do demos at Oomph for Layout Builder for clients, I actually have Umami set up, and I go in and I take a recipe and I say, okay, this is like the default recipe, right? And then I rearrange it and say, well, this is the recipe that I created because I want this up here and that down there. And people are like, oh, this is really cool. So with 8.7, this layout builder and the Umami demo is like ready to go. It's ready for prime time. So I definitely recommend it on your way home. You know, you're on the train, you don't have anything to do. You can grab Drupal. You can start. You can use Umami's install profile, and you're good to go. I also recommend, if you're looking for more material other than this talk, Ted Bowman actually did a great talk at Drupal Camp, New Jersey, called The New Layout Builder, Unleash the Power. So definitely check that out. Now, on to learning more about Layout Builder and some helpful modules.
This is where I step in, and thank you, John. All right, so I'm going to be sharing a handful of modules that specifically help with Layout Builder. Most of them we are using right now. Some of them we aren't, but I looked into them and they look pretty good. The first module I would recommend using with Layout Builder is the Layout Builder Restrictions module. What this does is it will let you restrict the fields, the blocks, and the layouts available per content type. Well, not even per content type, per anything that uses Layout Builder. So that's a nice one. And then the second module I would use, so as John was saying, block types are our new paragraph type. And in paragraphs, we were doing a lot of content entry, media entry, but also user-selected classes that would then get applied to your paragraph bundle. So what block style plugin does is give you a way in your theme level to create forms that will give you class forms to add to your blocks. So you don't actually have to create fields within your block types for things like background color. So this module has been around for a little while. I have it installed and working, and I'll show you some examples of it working within Layout Builder later on. One caveat for this is it is a little more advanced just because it does require some PHP forms to be created at the theme level, but the module provides some great test samples of various ways you might be using this. So there's a Layout Builder Modo module, which is helpful if any of you have tested out Layout Builder. You might have noticed that the drawer that opens up is about 200-300 pixels wide, and when you have a WYSIWYG field in there, it's tiny. Your buttons wrap to like 7 lines, and it's really hard for content entry. So we're using this Layout Builder modal right now. There are some known issues at the moment, especially if you're using entity embeds. They don't actually play so well right now. Fortunately, the site I'm using doesn't use it, and I'm able to use this and continue testing it out and seeing if it works. So I was looking for some modules that might integrate with views, and I came across Views Layout, and I was reading through it, and at the very bottom of the page, there was this quote, and it made me laugh. Just the first part of the sentence, for maximum flexibility and confusion. I'm like, that's so Drupal. Wow. So this module I haven't used. I'm going to talk about 3 views modules. So there's layout plugin views, and that's a layout to use within the row for your fields. Layouts, or views layout, which this quote is from, is to use on your layout to place your views rows on the page. And for a bonus complexity and confusion, there's a module called Views Parity Row. And what that allows is you to set different view modes per row of your view. So in combination, that could kind of go and really expand how you use Layout Builder in views and view modes. And this is actually an example of the views parity row and how I have set one view mode and then told it which views to apply to and then which views to use a different view mode for. So menus. There's always menus on your site, and mega menus are kind of becoming a thing as an easy way to get through to content. Again, the project I'm using Layout Builder on actually didn't have menus, luckily me. But I did find this really good article from Phase 2 Technologies that referenced menu items extras and menu blocks, which we've used in the past. But menu item extras gives you view modes for your menus. And having view modes for menus now means you have potential Layout Builder options at that level. Again, I haven't used this, so I'm not sure, but the article looked sound, and next project that I have menus, I'm going to be using it. And on to digging into these a little bit more and kind of showing more advanced scenarios or specific scenarios that we might be using Layout Builder for. First off, I wanted to kind of note the difference between a static layout and what we might be calling like a flexible or the layout override layout. So you might have, this is the Umami's recipe site. If that you as the site creator set it up and you placed your image there, your ingredients there, and the instructions below, that would be a static site, but there's an option for you to let the editors override that. And that's when it can become flexible. And that's when they can take what you put and move it around. And I'll show you an example of how that will look differently as the user later on. As John mentioned, paragraph types we're looking at them as the new block types. And for the content that we're putting into blocks are only the content that needs to be stored in the data. So content and then files, so media. The rest we're controlling through the block styles plugin module that I mentioned. And I'll be showing you some configuration of that. So if your block needed a body field, a title field, a media field that could be an image or a video, those would be fields in your block type. And then, let's go back. And again, for paragraph types, you can have 10, 5, 15. You can have the same here with your block types. So this is a little bit of a preview of the code that comes with the block style plugins module. So let's see, walk you through some of this. So right here, they give you this whole folder of test samples. And this would pretty much live right in your root theme folder. And you create this theme styles YAML in your theme, and then this one will go in your theme, which will then have a reference, which would be a file. No. And then I had an order to this when I created this. So this one will come here, and then this will call to that file. This is calling to your block class styles. and then your default configuration, and then any user selected information, font classes, background colors, spacing. And then what that does is in your block, when you're placing blocks in the block section, it will give you this style section, and you'll notice some of these are all the custom ones, but when you're in your layout, you'll also get the same options. And what's nice about this is you can exclude and include any of these configurable fields or forms towards any of your custom block types. So if one of my options is maybe a media theme, a darker light media theme, I don't need to give that availability to the WYSIWYG field, but I can include that one style form on my video and my audio block types. So there won't be any unneeded configuration per component, which is nice.
We've also had projects where we've created kind of a card that has an icon and used the same sort of idea to give the user the ability to select the icon as they're creating the content. So they have a default set of icons. Using this same feature, you could say, okay, well, here's the icon for contact, here's the icon for this, the icon for that. So it's just another idea of how you could use something like this.
All right, some tips and tricks on the things I've learned while working with Layout Builder and some of the things you might have seen. For example, Layout Builder will pull in your front-end theme styles. Here it's nice because the admin will know what color scheme they picked because it will show up here. It gets troublesome when you've applied a modal feature. So whenever you click the contextual link, your modal opens up. So you'll have to work around that, have some kind of workaround not to have that load on your admin page. But for the most part, it's nice to be able to see your content here in the layout. So I mentioned static versus flexible content. So what that means is, so let's let this roll through. And before you open up allowing your editors to move the content around, you can get in there first, place things, set a default. They won't have the layout button until you check that. And now, once you've opened that content up to the client to be able to lay out stuff, they'll have a new button alongside edit to then have the layout space. And so, like fields in Drupal, you can set default values. You can set default layouts in Layout Builder. Just be careful if you're using config split with multiple environments, that default view, if it has content or media in it, it's not, at that point, it's not just a config, it's both content, media, and config. So if you're working in environments, you might have some workarounds there to plan with your team and just communicate there. I mentioned earlier that I said something like it can be on, Layout Builder can be on a node or view mode, but layouts can be on anything with view modes. That means nodes, that means blocks, that means media, that means taxonomy, that means users, and with the menu items extras module, that means menus. So you can have layouts for all those things. Just one caveat. you'll start getting nested layouts. So be aware of that. You might have to get more generalized with your columns and rows once you start nesting. And one of the biggest changes I feel with working with Layout Builder, and it's where does the content live? How's the client gonna place this? I had to think, okay, because as you can see, by default, Layout Builder gives you every option. You have all the fields available to users. This is a menu one, so you have all your menu options. It's overwhelming. But then again, if you're used to creating things a certain way, you'll have to make sure it shows up in this list in a way that the client would understand that it's your header block. And it's not like listed under an entity view, so a view mode, as header or something like that, because they all show up here, and if it's named weird, you're just going to have to do extra training to teach them. So I've started to think what content might be site-wide. You might have your logo, your menus, your copyright statement, and that's the stuff that will probably live in your blocks library, because that could be used in multiple places. But then there's going to be repeatable stuff per content type, like normal, your title, subtitle, banner, references to other content. Those still can be fields, and they will show up in this list that they can then just place on the page. But then you open up your block content types to them, and then they can place any content in there, and it just lives. Even though it's a block type, if it gets created in the layout, it's stored with the layout. It is part of that content. It doesn't go out to the block library. Stuff in the block library stays there and can be used on your page, but blocks created on your page won't go to the library. So you kind of have to think of what content is site-wide, what content is fieldable, and what content is custom blocks on that content. So there's a little bit of content management, I feel, when creating sites with Layout Builder versus paragraphs.
I did find that it was a nice division when I was first getting into Layout Builder, that my block system wasn't kind of polluted with all the content related blocks that I was creating. So I thought that was good, and just another reason to jump into Mommy and start playing around with this, because that getting in there and understanding, like, oh, okay, if I create a block here, it's not available to the block system. If I create a block in the block system, it is available to the content, is super important.
So with that, I'm going to say, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. This should make stuff easier for your clients, and it's going to be awesome. Just, you'll have to think a little bit ahead of it about where they would expect to maintain that content.
They also have the ability to kind of go back to the default too. So if your client gets in there and they create a page and they're like, oh my gosh, I have totally botched this, right? They can go back to the default within the layout tab for that certain page.
Yes.
So it's a nice kind of backup in case they really go down a bad path.
And just a last little note, the future. So right now, we're working on a site. I worked with an old coworker of mine who's now over at General Assembly, and he was able to get custom classes configuration on the section row level. This is not out on Drupal.org yet, but this just shows you what is possible down the road. Right now, these things are kind of only available at the component level, where we're using it at the row level. And I definitely see this as the future moving forward. Some things to note, Media Library doesn't play well right now with Layout Builder. It's a known issue. They're working on it. And our workaround right now is to use the Entity Embed browser still. And then I mentioned the modal issue. That's just something to keep an eye on with the entities, and I believe it was also something to do with the Drupal modal ID was duplicated, and that was causing some issues. But yeah, just keep an eye on those, and I hope you guys really enjoy Layout Builder and start using it.
One example here of like how you're kind of thinking like, well, why would I set something on like on a section? One way that we use this, when we create our paragraph bundles, right? We have a paragraph bundle for a row, so that's like a whole row of content straight across the page. And on that row, you have the ability to set an animation for that row, a background color for that row. This module gives you that capability for a section. So instead of having to say, oh, well, the background color for these 3 blocks and fields are all going to be the same because they're in the same section, you can set that on the whole section. So kind of gives you that ability to say, okay, what applies to the whole section as opposed to like just the component. So in case somebody was looking for a real life example, there it is.
No, that's all I have.
All right, well, we appreciate you guys listening, and we'd be more than happy to answer all your questions. We've got quite a bit of time, so if you have questions, feel free to jump up to the mics and ask away. All right. Oh, there's a question back there.
How much customization can you do to the UI of Layout Builder?
So what do you mean by customization? Do you mean as far as like
dotted lines around the section and block, and how do you add things like what kind of controls do you have on that?
We've actually removed the default Drupal Layout Builder styles, and we're actually using Bootstrap here. So we've actually overrode all of Drupal's default Layout Builder styles, and we're using our own.
Also, Layout Builder itself has the ability for you to add new layouts to it through your template files. So in your template, you can say, hey, I want to, full width with 3 column with a 2 column. So you have the ability to create those additional layouts as well, right within core layout builders. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So you did a lot of custom work on this UI. It's not coming from the layout.
So like the config, that's all like this would look very much like default, but we've just kind of put our own, we've used Bootstrap grid behind it versus what Drupal had for their columns.
Okay.
But you can, it's tied to your front end theme, so it has an ID for Layout Builder, and then each row or section has a unique Layout Builder ID, so you could custom build this using Layout Builder IDs and styles.
Benji, you're up.
So I know that a lot of work has gone into the accessibility features. Some of that you may be overriding for custom styles. The things like when you select a block in the Layout Builder, how should it be highlighted and how can we make that accessible and useful? And I wonder if you've tried using Layout Builder with just keyboard or voice control or screen reader. Have you tried any of the accessibility features?
No, I haven't. My accessibility focus is front end. I want to make sure every user can get the information from the site. Our admin, our clients, it's not a high priority for them. But I like the question, and next time I'm in it, I'm totally going to try, and I'll let you know.
All right. Well, question in the back.
I'm going to shout it.
Okay.
So with translation, have you guys tried translating, and is it done at the block type level, or is it block by block individually? How does that work?
So that's a great question. Yes is the answer to that question. We haven't actually done any translations for a client yet, but we have played around with it a little bit. And yes, you're basically doing kind of field translation, block translation. The only thing that is still being worked on, and I believe Tim Plunkett talked about this at DrupalCon, was that some of the layout builder UI, like admin, hadn't been translated yet or wasn't capable of being translated yet, but they're working on that. That's on the roadmap. So yeah, I would say you're probably translating this kind of the same way that you would translate other types of content. Brian?
I think the layout itself isn't translatable yet, but that's also something that they're working on. So you can't have a separate layout for language. Yes.
Right. Okay. That is true too.
Gotcha.
Layout builder, is that primarily used on content types, or can you also use that on the individual blocks?
Yes, blocks, media, taxonomy, users, that's all default, like out of the box. If you want it to work on menus, you can install the menu item extras module that gives you view modes. So it's under view mode. So if you go to the view mode, and then you pick whichever view mode, sometimes it's default, but you might have teaser or full, and then there's where you'll get your option to manage layouts.
True to say, like any entity that has view modes?
Yep.
Okay. In the back.
You're next.
You mentioned that a client could revert back to the default layout if they didn't like what they had done. When they do that, does that preserve the content they've already added, or is that content lost?
That's a great question. So if the content is on the content type in a field, I'm going to imagine that it's preserved. If it's in a block type, I don't actually know if it's preserved.
I don't think it would be preserved because it would be like deleting a node and that content would be lost. But if you go down the path of starting to move things around and you're like, I really hate this layout, but I put a lot of content in, save it, create a new one, copy paste that content out of that first one into your second one.
Thanks.
Oh, also the blocks, I could move that default hero block below my header block right here, just drag and drop. So that's a nice little feature here.
Yeah, drag and drop in space is awesome.
Just one note, when you're talking about editing the layouts within the view mode, that's the default view mode. And there is an active issue to add layouts for other view modes as well.
Yeah, there's a patch. I believe it's linked right on the layout builder page. I've been using that patch. It's like a third-party something or other thing so that your full content or your teaser view mode, thanks for pointing that out, will actually show up using the layout builder. Yeah, that patch. The patch to core for this. Thank you.
Does it come with any responsive features, like in terms of using the grid and reordering content based on specific breakpoints?
Yep, so out of the box, it will, I believe it has a 1, 2, 3 column layout by default, and they will, once you're down to a smaller size, they'll stack out of the box.
And if you, does it deal with the ordering when you're stacking content?
I believe that's just to write out of the box, but you could, like what we're doing is we're using Bootstrap, so we're able to use it. Yeah, if you're using Flexbox, you can just add those styles in and reorder them yourself if you wanted to at certain breakpoints.
So do you put it in like the configure panel that you can?
No, that would be more of my style sheet is where I would do that, unless there was a requirement to allow the user to order it. But as I said, if I had like 3 blocks in that one section with the header, I could reorder them right there. I could make the third one the first one. Granted, that would be across all devices.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time and thank you again.